that's fine.
I'll set Jean Marie.
Okay, hold on. My AirPods just disconnected. Hold on. Yep. I guess they're not going to connect. I'm telling you.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Oh, well, my God, I swear Mercury's retrograde or something with things that went on last night. I apologize to the public. Hold on. Hold on.
Just landed on Mars. I'm sure you can handle those earphones.
It's a good thing I'm not in charge of them landing on Mars. They'd be, I don't know, on Saturn or Jupiter. God only knows where they'd be. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ordinance Committee meeting of Thursday, February 18th. Wow, spring's coming. If this is the official call to order, roll call. Tracy, if you don't mind.
Councilor Johnson,
Here.
Councilor Hamel,
Here,
Councilor Katarina.
Here. Could we have approval of the minutes from October 22nd? Are there any questions? I'll ask that first. Could I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
second,
And if we could have the vote call, Tracy?
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Hamel,
yes,
Councilor Katarina.
Yes, that is unanimous. All right, just a reminder to folks in the audience, I do allow for up to a 15-minute total time limit on public comments on anything that's on this agenda. Each person is, I ask that you keep your comments to no more than 3 minutes. And the reason we do this, that technically ordinance committee meetings don't have to allow for public comment, but I don't think that's right. I think that should be allowed. But it is, these are meetings where we do the work of the council. And remember, anything that we do here is not final. It's got to go from us up to the town council, and the town council has final say in anything we do. So with that being said, Liam, you're my magic guy here. Why don't we go with Mr. Hall first? I see he's got his hand up.
Oh,
Oh, there he, did you let him in?
I believe I did. Let's see here. Tom, you should be a panelist, but
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
your microphone and camera are off. Here, I can ask that. Just one moment.
Sure.
Well, why don't we come back
Okay,
to-
all right. Gretchen McKeska, could you let her in, please?
So Gretchen, if you unmute, you should be able to.
Yep, I got it.
All right.
Hi, Gretchen, if you want to let us know your thoughts.
Okay, hi, Gretchen McKeska, 14 Houghton Street in Higgins Beach. Let's see, I spent my first summer, I guess I can say I am commenting on the fireworks.
Okay.
events. I spent my first summer as a beach monitor. I've lived at the beach for 30 years, but this is the first year I joined my neighbors in that very important role. As you know, on Higgins Beach, we have piping plovers, which are endangered, and least terns, which are endangered. And also, as you know, who spent any time at Higgins Beach in the last 30 years, it's a very popular beach. This year was very interesting with COVID. We had a lot of different type of use and activities. And, you know, as you know, we were at one point in time, pretty much the only place in the Portland suburb area that was almost open for visitors, with everything closed for a while early in spring. But moving on to our beach monitoring starts for the birds and Glennis Shabbat can tell me the exact date, but it starts officially in, I think, May 15th, extends to Labor Day. And so that entails us, we all have our different times we're assigned because I live right at the beach and next to our head volunteer person. I spent a lot more time there. I put my tally at the end of the summer was 200 hours. So I spent a lot of time on the beach with these birds. As far as the fireworks go, as you know, in the town of Scarborough, we have the 4 days that we can do the fireworks, the 3rd and the 4th of July, and the 31st and 1st of January. I'm most concerned about the 3rd and 4th of July. This is peak bird hatching season for plovers. They are running all around the beach, and all these birds are endangered species in the state of Maine. So that's a big commitment, and having it at a very crowded beach like Higgins is, I'll tell you, it's a nightmare actually. Now, but even though we all love the plovers, I'm going to really turn my attention to the least terns, because those are the ones that are actually probably even more affected by the fireworks, because they're the ones that there's only 2 colonies in the state of Maine. We have one of them. A few years ago, the other monitors had alerted me that they all left one time because of a kite. So now, if you look at on the state of Maine website, talking about our endangered species, they talk about items we should be doing to recommendations. They have a list of about 20 things here. Avoid flying kites or playing beach volleyball games within 100 yards of the plover or tern nesting areas. That's a big problem. But we're not going to talk about that now. Avoid fireworks within 1 mile of the nesting area. My day for monitoring was Saturday night. So I was assigned from 5:30 till 9 p.m. every Saturday night all summer. Saturday night was the 4th of July this year. So I had that, I was actually pretty stressed out about having that as my night.
Gretchen, your times, I'm allowing you to go a little over your time. So if you could wrap that up, that would be awesome.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Anyway, I had to call the police. There was fireworks all over, people had permits, so there wasn't much they could do, though they did spill out into the streets. They were about 50 yards probably from where the birds were nesting, as opposed to 1 mile. And we almost lost the whole community. I really thought they left. We did lose them at the end of August when a display went off at the Sprague Point on the other side. The other thing I'll note that there's 48 towns in the state of Maine that have banned consumer use and sale of fireworks, and they're all around us in our populated Cumberland County, and we should join them. Thank you.
Thank you, Gretchen. I appreciate it. How about Robert Tricoli, I think? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
So Robert, if you.
All right.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll be very concise.
That's
Tricoli,
fine.
22 Forest Street in Higgins Beach. And my main objection, along with the plovers, has to do with the fire danger. We border what I might call Piper Shores Conservation Area, the 15 acres that borders us and along the ocean. And there are probably hundreds of dead, dying, and trees and leaning trees. And there is a lot of fuel on the forest ground there. So my objection is that fireworks would spark a fire on the coast and along our border. So I'm against the fireworks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. just a reminder to folks that if you want to speak to our growth management, this is also the time to speak, because once this period closes, then there's no more public comment. Betsy, I think you're yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I had a suggestion on a fireworks ordinance. I do definitely sympathize with the folks at Higgins Beach. But we have pretty big restrictions right now, and there are several folks that do enjoy fireworks. So I was thinking of an overlay zone, or maybe just the ordinance banning Higgins Beach, because I do think that they have some concerns down there that make a lot of sense. And, kind of the nice thing about Higgins Beach is there's only one way in and one way out. So we could actually signage, pretty easily saying restricted by local ordinance, no fireworks, Higgins Beach area, something like that. So I would definitely, try to, consider something that wouldn't ban it for the rest of the town, because, where I've got 2 acres, I don't know what you've got, Jean Marie, we, on our side of town, it's really a whole different beast. And it's already pretty restricted, and there are a number of people that really do enjoy shooting fireworks off. In terms of the growth management ordinance, it's a little difficult to comment at the beginning of the meeting because I haven't heard the dialogue, but I would just hope that, and it seems like we're probably moving towards all council workshop soon. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Betsy. Appreciate it. Marvin Gates, Mr. Gates, please.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Marvin Gates, 423 Black Point Road. I'm echoing Betsy's comment about it's difficult to comment about the presentation on the growth management, which I will listen to eagerly. And it raises a question I have is there a way, or how is the way to comment on the presentation that we will hear shortly?
Marvin, as always, anyone can email me or email all of us on the ordinance committee. And remember, this is just a starting place. Anything that comes out of ordinance goes to town council with all the hearings and readings and whatever. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else have any comments that they wish to make on either fireworks or Allison Bristol? Did you have your hand up?
Yep. Allison, you should be all set.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everybody. And first of all, thank you very much for putting the fireworks ordinance on the agenda. And needless to say, I think you've heard from me enough on the issue. I was very encouraged when I saw the attachment to the agenda today, and where I've been sort of advocating for a distance from structure provision and something that would follow the IFW guidelines of no consumer fireworks a mile from the endangered species nesting areas. I do think that it would be hard to kind of slice and dice and, in town, unless, I don't know if it's fair and equitable to just say no fireworks at Higgins Beach. That certainly would work for us. But I would be support the idea of a ban on fireworks. No other coastal town between Kittery and Bath allows consumer fireworks except Scarborough. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your time and consideration on this.
Thank you, Allison. Susan Thompson, please.
Susan, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to free to talk.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. So Susan Thompson, 1 Ocean Ave. 5 years, and we don't like the fireworks. We're not so much worried about the birds as the people. Those fireworks are now Japanese lanterns that fly over our houses. So people are out here hosing down their roofs when the fireworks are here. And it's just not a very comfortable feeling. And I will tell you, the police have not been too receptive when we call, except for 2 years ago when Michael Thurlow invited us to send him an email, which we did, and he got a policeman out here to monitor the fireworks. But so I am very much against the fireworks. I think they're dangerous. The ones at Town Hall are great on family days in August. Maybe we could do more of that as a public service. So, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. All right. I can take one more here. Glennis, can you bring Glennis in?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
Glennis, you should be okay if you unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay.
You're all set.
All right. I support the proposed ordinance to eliminate the consumer fireworks, but I'm also okay with eliminating it in certain areas, especially Higgins. Consumer fireworks are difficult to regulate and enforce, as we have seen during the past 8 years since the ordinance has been on the books. I have concerns with the safety issues created in our high-density neighborhoods and also the potential for personal injury with just everybody or anybody shooting off these fireworks. Changing this ordinance will definitely benefit our endangered birds and keep debris off the beaches and out of marshes if you do it town-wide. Present ordinance does not allow fireworks on the beaches, but the properties that border the beach are able to shoot them off. So I support the ordinance, and I thank you for bringing this forward at this time, and hopefully we can have something in place before the 4th of July. Thank you.
Thank you, Glennis. All right. 4:15, right on time. So that ends the public comment portion of the ordinance meeting. I would like to get a motion to swap items 5 and 6 so that we can discuss fireworks first and GMO second. So could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Tracy, could you take a?
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor Katarina.
Yes, thank you. All right, so as people have mentioned here, fireworks has a long and, dare I say, painful history in Scarborough. It's been back and forth a few times. I will admit that when it first came to town, I've always been one who thinks we don't need consumer fireworks. I'm not a fan of them personally, but I will come at this from my own experiences on this side of Scarborough. For folks who don't know, I do live in North Scarborough. I'm out on the other side of town towards Gorham. I do have 8 acres of land here. But that being said, I also have had neighbors in the past who feel like they can shoot off fireworks whenever their heart desires. And in the summer, particularly the last couple of summers with drought conditions, it's been pretty scary. I also have neighbors with horses who have not been happy. It affects animals. I hear every year from dog owners from various parts of town, in particular the beach areas, and that includes Pine Point, Prouts Neck, wherever, that they just don't think that it's too cool. I also feel, this is Jean Marie speaking, that the debris and whatever left behind by fireworks, most people don't pick up after themselves. And there are some environmental issues there. So I decided to bring forward this as a ban it in the whole town, as opposed to an overlay or trying to chop up the town in different areas, because my experiences in my years as a counselor has been complaints from all the areas of Scarborough for various reasons. So that's my spiel. Mr. Johnson or Mr. Hamel? Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Yes, just mindful of process and protocol. Do we want to make a motion to bring this to the floor table so we can discuss?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
I wasn't embarrassing you. I was just thinking.
No, that's fine. That's fine. So you making a motion to
I am.
discuss?
I will make a motion for Chapter 6A, Town Council Consumer Fireworks Ordinance is hereby revoked immediately upon passage. That I would imagine would be the action item that would be brought forward to the Town Council.
Well, and there's a second part too. It's the Chapter 508, because if you do away with one, you got to do away with the other because they're connected.
Okay. And therefore,
Yeah.
Chapter 608, Town of Scarborough Fireworks Display Ordinance is amended by striking Section 7, Consumer Fireworks.
That's 12. That's a 12. But
Yes,
that's okay.
you are correct.
That's okay.
Roman numeral. So that's-
Former Latin teacher here, sorry. So, yes, thank you. That's the motion. Do I have a second, Mr. Hamel?
Yeah, I would second the motion for us
Okay.
to discuss, yes.
All right, let's go to discussion now. I'm sorry, I have to switch my brain from business meetings to parliamentary procedure. Now, Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Okay, I have some questions for Tom and Liam, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm assuming, well, my understanding is the council does have the authority to revoke a ordinance following the regular procedure. Is that correct?
Yeah, certainly.
Right.
Council has the ability to enact and revoke ordinances, yes.
Okay. Has anybody explored at all the legal liability the town may have if we proceed with this? And as a side note, I did hear somebody express, I know it's just a public personal opinion, which I value, but I'm assuming that we cannot ban the sale. We have in-town establishments that's how they make a living. So I would assume we can only do as this ordinance states, consumer fireworks, but is that use?
I believe it is specific to use. Correct.
Okay. So any legal liability, Tom, that you've thought of, or should this?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, what gave rise to this 8 or 9 years ago was a change in state law that made it lawful statewide.
Right.
As was mentioned in public comment, we're one of the only communities that chose at the time to allow it
Right.
under certain limited conditions.
Right.
Most others back when the enabling legislation was created simply chose not to allow the use of consumer fireworks in the
Right.
first instance.
So if you don't mind, I'm just going to keep following up on the legal aspects, because these were just the things that jump to me. Do we know how many retail sellers we have in town? I'm only aware of one now. Is that correct? Do you know, was the positive business atmosphere on fireworks in the town any influence on his decision to establish a retail establishment here?
Initially, there were 2, and now you're correct. I believe there's only 1 Phantom Fireworks, and I'm quite certain, I'm recalling from years ago, but I'm quite certain that the fact that we allowed them here did have an influence on them locating here. At least in regard to Phantom, I think they were also very interested in being close to Cabela's, and it's
Correct.
more of a demographic marketing draw than anything.
Right, but did they come after the ordinance was approved, the original ordinance, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you don't think maybe that there could be possible legal problems there if we were just to outright say, no, you cannot now use them in the town of Scarborough, still sell them? Okay.
No, I don't believe so. They may not be pleased with the decision, but I don't believe there's any legal exposure. It's fully within your right. There's no guarantee for them that these laws wouldn't change in the future.
Okay, would that hold true also? I'm thinking, and I'm not sure, does like Bailey's Campground have fireworks? I understand if they were to do a show, they'd have to come forward for a permit. So that
Yeah.
would separate. But do they allow maybe the campers to bring their own fireworks and shoot them off? Do you know? Again,
I'm not aware of their actual operating protocols, but as regards our local requirements, theoretically, legally, that would be possible. I would be surprised if they allowed the use of consumer fireworks among their customers, but it's certainly true that they do formal commercial firework displays on frequency, several times a week, as I recall, during the summer months. But that's with a professional pyrotechnic company that falls under Chapter 608.
Okay. Okay, I'm good for right now, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, but I would like to discuss the proposed measure, and I have different view than some of the others have expressed. So, is it time for that now, or should we?
No. This is
Okay.
time to put forth your opinion.
Thank you. So we have heard the folks primarily from Higgins on this issue, I think, in terms of how strongly they feel about limiting fireworks in their area. And I'm sensitive to the comments that have been made about wildlife protection, for the plovers, for the terns, and I do know that Higgins is, it's a smaller beach than other beaches we have in town. I live at Pine Point Beach. If you count the entire length of the beach, I guess it's 7 miles if you include the going on down to Old Orchard Beach. So there are a number of things that we've done that have been as a town and considering our beach areas that have not fallen in line with all of the other towns along the coast. We have larger beaches, longer beaches, so we don't line up exactly with them. And we have plovers on the Pine Point Beach. We don't have terns, but frankly, I think the greater risk is there's a greater risk to them of people not really keeping their dogs on leashes, and chasing shorebirds. So not to kind of get the dog crowd all worked up, but so I'm against a town-wide prescription here. I think that's too broad. I'm entirely open to restricting them in the Higgins Beach area. But we're talking about a handful of days of the year. Nobody mentioned the wildlife or the fire impact around the New Year's dates in which they are permitted. So I think the proposed measure, and I know a lot of time has gone into drawing that up, but I'm opposed to it because I believe it is too far-reaching and does not represent completely all of the opinions on use that remain in town. So I'm not going to support it as it's currently written, but would be open to revisions.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, well, I'll follow up with that. I wouldn't support isolating any one part of the town, meaning like Higgins Beach, to do this. If it's beach, it's beach. There are, we have a very sensitive ecosystem in the town of Scarborough with marsh and our shorelines and whatnot. I actually would support a total ban, but I would be open to a discussion of possibly an overlay of a minimum of 1 mile of shoreline, period, regardless of what neighborhood it's in. So that's where I would stand on it.
Okay. And I am obviously for a ban for the whole town. Having seen the various permutations of this over the years, it's just gotten to be unwieldy. Remember, people are supposed to file to set off fireworks and this and that and the other thing. It's not being, I shouldn't say it's not being followed. It may or may not. But for all of the reasons that I laid out. However, I think, frankly, I would like to see it go to council. I don't think it needs to stay here in ordinance. We've gotten, some feedback. I would like to have a motion, if you would, to at least move it to council for further discussion and discussion of if any overlays make sense or not. I'm not a fan of the overlays, but you know me, I'm open to discussion and seeing what makes the best sense based on the will of the council. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I just have a question on that. I mean, what would go in front of the council? Like the comments stated? Because so I'm thinking the full council won't have the benefit of all the discussions and the feedback that this committee has heard. So, I mean, if we move something to the full council, I think it should come with at least some recommendations, and it can be more than one. You know, it could be a couple recommendations to focus, but not sure.
Well, it would go to council as it came out of ordinance, and then whatever the vote is, if we vote to send it to council. Again, people, and you have to understand that Jean Marie's the one that drafted this. Okay, so we do have to look. I need to look closely at the selling. You know, whether the sale thing is in there also. I hadn't thought of that, but that's okay.
Yep.
We can address that at council. At least this puts it in front of council.
Yep.
People who have spoken to us here, I'm sure they'll be back to speak, you know, at readings, because it goes through the process of readings, first reading, second reading, whatever. But certainly I'm happy to forward emails and a quick write-up to the council on what happened in ordinance. They can also, remember, the councilors can also look at
The recording.
is this being recorded? Okay. So it's, you know, they can look at the recording or whatever. Does that answer your question, Ken?
Yeah, I was again just questioning the process on, you know,
Yeah.
typically the council expects the committee to do work and bring forward, but again, I'll go with the flow. It definitely needs a full discussion anyway.
Yeah, Dawn, do you mind if to get Tom in here first?
Go ahead.
Just simply procedurally, unless you intend this to be workshopped, I believe the matter needs to be postured and positioned in one way or another for it to be formally received and heard on the action agenda for the council.
Okay.
Whatever that posture may be, of course, it can be changed once the council has its way with it.
Okay.
Dawn, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question on Ken's suggestion about the 1 mile prescription. You know, I don't really understand what that would do and how that would apply. You suggested accepting 1 mile of beach. Which direction? Toward the ocean or toward OB or?
Buffer from the ocean, so it'd be away from the ocean.
So you couldn't do fireworks anywhere on a beach in 1 mile going inland, right? Away from the water.
Yeah, it'd be 1 mile inland measured from the high water mark, or something like that. As a practical matter, if that's the approach you took, whether it's 1 mile or 100 feet, well, or some other distance, we would probably develop exhibits and actually show where that is on the face of the earth. That just helps with education and enforcement. So we can pursue that further if that's the direction you wish to go.
So one thing I'd say is that there have been a number of things that have been offered. Even the folks that have been most vocal against fireworks were willing to have that apply only to Higgins. You know, the way this is going to work, if we do the 1 mile adjustment, even if we make that revision or move this thing forward as it's currently written, folks are just going to walk down the beach 100 yards from where I'm sitting, and they're going to go to Old Orchard, and they're going to blow them off down there on the beach. Okay, so they're going to, you know, that's the way it's going to work in Pine Point. So you know, we're a big town, and I know that there are a lot of people that have raised various issues. So I am very uncomfortable with moving anything forward that's going to take up a lot of time with the council, and then we're going to be in the position of having to potentially modify things live. So if there's any chance that we're going to have to do that, I would say this needs another turn, if you will, to use an unfortunate.
I'm going to disagree with you respectfully, Mr. Hamill. and the reason for that is that to me it's pretty straightforward. You bring it up to the council. It doesn't have to go to the council the next meeting. I mean, this technically they're not allowed till July. We haven't, you know, till July to get this through if it's going to be through modified. But I really want to see a council-wide discussion and a community-wide discussion on it because, you know, that's just how I feel about it. That's my thoughts. Mr. Johnson.
Yep. Yeah, Don, Councilor Hamel, I'm sorry. I was just trying to find a balance somewhere, and a balance somewhere between an all-out ban and preserving the most precious part of our environment, which were the majority of the complaints. And again, I don't isolate Higgins. I just won't do that. I know a lot of folks in Higgins, but we have, you know, a lot of miles of beach down to Pine Point. And if folks want to saunter on down and do it in Old Orchard Beach where it's legal, then all the more power to them. So I'm just trying to find a balance. I think probably the part of what this committee is going to do is bring forward to the council either one or the other.
So, I mean, we said on this, here is what you're saying, and I'm going to, you know, parry that. I hear what you're saying. This is sat for a long time, you know, almost 9 months, I guess, from the last time that we talked about it. I believe that part of our job as a committee is to make sure the cake is baked before we frost it, okay? And I don't think this cake is baked yet. So, so if we want to, you know, take it out of the oven too soon, or, you know, not pour the batter in the pan, whatever analogy you want to use, I don't, you know, I'm not, you know, and you just need 2 votes to move out of committee. So I can do the math, but this is kind of where I come out on it. So, and we don't really have any revisions pending. All we have is a couple of ideas, and we have Jean Marie's motion, Jean Marie's in current form.
I'm going to have to watch that English bacon show because I love what you pull out of it.
Now, come on, we're not supposed to be having a good time in ordinance meeting. We're supposed to be very serious. So I'd like to make a motion that we move this out of council as written. I mean, out of council, listen to me, out of ordinance as written to council at the earliest that the chair and Mr. Vice Chair feel that it makes sense, because I do know we have a full workload right now, but sometime within the next, I don't know, 6 weeks, whatever.
I believe that motion is pending, Jean Marie. That's on the table.
Oh, okay. Well, I just want to, whatever. I'm just reinforcing that.
Okay.
Are we ready for a vote?
On it going forward to council?
Yep.
Councilor Johnson,
Yes.
Councilor Hamel,
No.
Councilor Caterina.
Yes. So we'll make sure that they know it was a split decision.
Oh, it's going to live or die in the council. And that's what it's supposed to happen.
I just don't feel any need to have it sit here any longer.
And the votes are in your favor.
I'm sorry.
You can still be friends.
Yes, we can still be friends. Agree to disagree. There we go. All right. Next is the presentation by Councilor Chair Johnson and Councilor Cloutier. This is a video just for the purposes of the public. John and Paul got together. I didn't know they were doing this. And put together this video for the purposes of this ordinance committee to get a discussion and some thought going on what next steps should be. I will tell you that just as a weird coincidence, they happened to meet and do this video, and I had left a message regarding, actually I did a quick email with some brainstorming on my thoughts on GMO that weren't too far off from this. But without any further ado, Liam, we can play this, right? I hope, so everyone can see it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Everyone have that? Can everyone see the GMO proposal screen?
Yes.
I have a process question, Madam Chair.
Yes,
Are we gonna watch the full 14 minutes? and-
yes,
Okay, but we'll
Yes.
be able to go back to the charts? Okay.
yes, and this is just really a discussion.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Everyone ready?
Okay, welcome everybody. This is me, Paul Johnson, and John Clucci. John and I met yesterday with Jay Chase, and the reason for our meeting was I had, in the course of John and I just discussing other council issues, we started talking about some of the GMO challenges that we have, and specifically, we feel like we're on that point in the process where we're probably going to start pivoting towards policy discussion and a little bit less fact finding and presentations from staff. So we put our heads together, and we thought it would be best for us to present to the Ordinance Committee first on some of the policy suggestions that we have together. Before I go into the rest of this proposal, I'm going to have John is going to show us some economic indicators that he's been working on for quite some time.
Great, thanks, Paul. I'm going to try to share my screen here. And share, and we'll see if this does it. Can you see me? Okay. So this is just looking at the second quarter wage and earnings data for the town of Scarborough, specific to Scarborough. And Paul and I are coming at this not necessarily from the same place, but I think we both sense there's a little more urgency than we had initially anticipated. So I think it's time to try to help the ball moving. And one of the things I've been looking at, is, our system took a shock in the second quarter. Total wages were flat. Sorry, this is local government. If I look at just the private industry, we have a couple bright spots. Construction was up 15%. Manufacturing was up almost 20%. But there's some industries that took a real beating. Accommodation and food services, way down. So what I'm looking at this is right now, we've got an industry that's been booming in town for at least the past year that's really helped to stabilize the impact of the pandemic on our overall tax base. And our current GMO, given that we're is putting that at risk. So from my perspective, I want to see if there's some sort of action or near-term remedy that we can do to at least allow this to keep going maybe a little bit longer. And I fully understand that other counselors have completely different perspectives on that. So I think what Paul and I were able to kind of brainstorm is hopefully some key themes that we could all get behind. And if you want to jump back into the slides, Paul, I think we can start going through those.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we go. And to John's point, we are coming at this at two different places, so to speak, but I think we landed on some common agreement. So first, let's talk about the premises that John and I are operating under together. Our first premise is the council would like to more closely manage the pace of growth in town. I think there's an overall feeling that the GMO has a set it and forget it feel, and some of it, it leaves us a little bit uncomfortable with how that plays itself out. Second premise is Scarborough has seen a surge in demand that is causing a spike in the housing values, and the council should try to manage this. The current GMO provisions are creating an artificial short supply of permits, analogous to a run on the bank. This is, Jay Chase mentioned this, and I couldn't agree more. We are out of growth permits, but I think that nobody would be surprised if several of those growth permits were returned to us later on in the year. But what we've done is create a climate of uncertainty, so people are reacting to that. Thirdly, the council has a desire to protect traditional neighborhoods in low growth areas and accepts that higher density growth in targeted areas is a necessity for long-term financial stability of the town while making Scarborough more affordable for all demographics. Fourth, there is a number of well-planned developments in town that should have a pathway to move forward. Of course, the Downs is one that everybody immediately thinks of, but there is also activity in Dunstan Corner that has, again, it's not unplanned sprawl development. It is planned development that has a very clear path forward. And lastly, as written, the current GMO coupled with the reserve pool clauses is a complex and difficult to understand. There is a need to update this ordinance as the current language was primarily developed around a single family impacts and is not well suited to address the current mix of single and multifamily development that is not only occurring in town, but is also being encouraged as our comp plan would suggest in certain areas of town. Before we move off the slide, John, do you have anything to add to the premises?
Yeah, I would just add that, I think a lot of this stuff is pretty consistent with the work that's been done on the comprehensive plan and the one that is currently in place. The idea or the concept is you try to reduce sprawl because it's less efficient to service widespread development. If you contain it to a smaller area, then it's more efficient for police, fire, public works, and whatnot. So as a town, it's economically more feasible to do that. It's also more environmentally friendly, and I know that different councilors might have different views on that, but it helps to protect our open spaces, and while doing that, you can protect the rural character of the bulk of Scarborough. So the next slide is a couple of tweaks to the current language. I think that I think Jay and Tom brought them forward, but I think they're pretty smart. Right now, there's kind of a loophole in the current language where if you're a contractor, you can subdivide a subdivision into multiple pieces to get around the 20% threshold that we currently cap your building permits or your growth permits at. So what Jay's concept is let's tie that to a common scheme of development, and the language would be still to come, but let's close that loophole. I guess was the key point, which I think we agreed was a good idea or a good concept. The second is one that I would require that the growth permit application and the building permit application be submitted at the same time. And frankly, if this had been in place a year ago, I'm not sure that we would find ourselves in the situation that we're in right now. Because like Paul was saying, I think what we have is a situation with uncertainty. So people are hedging their bets. They're like, well, geez, I might need to build something at the end of the year. I better snatch up a growth permit now. Whereas if this was in place, they would wait until they're ready to actually build to pull that growth permit. So Paul, do you have anything to add on these two items?
Nope, that sums it up for me. So I will move on to first, we have two main primary, they're multifaceted, but we have two policy directions. This is policy direction number 1. It involves the annual allocation and fractionalization. What John and I are proposing is replace fractional growth permits to provide 1 unit equals 1 growth permit. This would necessitate a resulting increase in the annual allocation based off the 10.
Did we lose audio?
I think you need to hover over. There you go. Try backing it up just a few clicks.
Based off a 10-year average. We also, and we haven't done this yet, this is just something to explore how the town can legally differentiate the number of permits from the annual allocation that can be used for a single family home versus multifamily home. So instead of fractionalization, is there a way that we could actually specifically call out X amount of single family homes are okay? And then if we were able to do this, which again, we need to make sure we could, we would use the 10-year average of single-family homes as a baseline for the allocation differential. Secondly, we'd protect the character and natural resources across town by hinging the number of growth permits that could be issued in low-growth areas, as defined by the comp plan, to the minimum, which is essentially. So again, this would be a complete elimination of fractionalization. It would clean up the language, make it simpler to use. We still have to abide by the state statutes, and there is some. We'll do some work if this gets traction enough amongst the body. John?
Yeah, I mean, my only comment would be I feel like the fractionalization was brilliant at the time. It was forward thinking, but it's also really confusing. And I think there's probably a clearer, more explicit way to get at the same outcomes. We want to limit single-family growth. We want to allow, for housing for younger people, older people that may not want to own a home. So I think the concept here, if you are allowed to differentiate it, is a good one.
Good. Let's take the next one, John.
So this one is to eliminate the reserve pool. I don't know if those are exactly the right words to say, but essentially the reserve also could
Dawn, can you mute?
fractionalization. What we are proposing is that we set up council allocated permits allowance, I guess you could refer to it as. And they're not wholly different than the reserve pool in that they can still be used for contract zones. So when the council approves a contract zone, we allocate reserve pool permits for that project during the contract zone action. If the units are part of a project where at least 50% is affordable, then that in today's world allows you access to the reserve pool, and in the future world, it would allow you access to these council allocated permits. The big difference is it really relates to the tightening up of language earlier in the removal of fractionalization, is that we need to have a pathway for projects that are in high growth areas as defined in the comprehensive plan, the one that's in effect and the one that we will adopt presumably in the near future. They need to have a pathway to move forward, right? These are pretty large scale projects, and we don't necessarily want them building all single family homes on there. So what we're proposing, and again, the language is still TBD, but the developer have the ability, once they've exhausted their annual allocation from our whatever the 135 becomes, that they can come to the council and apply for an additional permit or set of permits. And then it would be up to the council to either say yes or no to that request.
Yeah, and I think I would just add to that, these new council allocated permits would be created and issued in the same motion. Again, we're not working on language, we're just floating ideas. But so there would be no quote balance of these permits. We would judge each development or each project on its merits if they fit one of these three, and we would issue them accordingly. So I think that, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, no, so the mechanics of that we still need to work out, right? Because we don't issue the building permit. If we want to tie these, these permits to a building permit or issuance of a building permit, yeah. But I think, I think you're right for this little subset outside of the annual allocation or the annual total. Then there probably is a mechanism that could be used for the council to say, yeah, we're going to grant these specifically for you or for this project.
Yeah, and if I said building permits, I meant growth permits, so I apologize. I don't know if I said building permits, but so yeah, just to recap, simplifying everything. I think removing fractionalization, essentially making the annual allocation pool pretty much as conservative as we can, and with an eye towards protecting low growth areas, but then allowing projects that by their very nature almost don't quite fit in the annual allocation to come forth to us and us to approve. I think it's important to note we have not asked any staff to do any work on this. This has come from Jay was kind enough to give us an hour and a half of his time yesterday just to help us understand things. But there is no official request on our end for the staff to create language around this. We are simply, as two counselors who are like-minded here, we're simply trying to drive a conversation that seems to be pivoting towards policy. And we're just letting, as early in that conversation as possible, we're just floating some ideas for everybody else to critique and make suggestions on.
Yeah, and I exactly. I think we're trying to advance the conversation that's already been taking place. So I don't know that any of this stuff is something that hasn't been said elsewhere, but we're trying to tie it together and hopefully come up with something that everybody on the council can get behind and support, so that we can move forward. I think probably a little more quickly than we had originally anticipated when we set our goals back in January.
All right. That being said, Mr. Hall, if you don't mind me calling on you. I know you were away last week. Do you have any thoughts from a town manager point of view at this juncture that we should think about as we begin our reacting?
Yeah, I'm very appreciative that they took the initiative to try to advance the conversation. I've felt for some time now that we're really kind of circling and aimlessly at this point. And so very appreciative that they're kind of moving that conversation forward. And they correctly pointed out that this needs some certainly legal review, and I would also add kind of practical review, kind of mechanically how this all works. That's just kind of a passing observation. I guess the one thing that I expressed, I feel a little concerned about is this council allocated permits. It feels a bit too micromanagement, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One, I think it possibly will gum up the council's work. It's going to further complicate your work, but that may be fine. But it also potentially creates some winners and losers, and it may politicize the process. And that's just kind of my knee-jerk reaction to that. I need to think about it more. So those are just kind of two cautionary notes I would give you. It strikes me though, most of the significant projects would probably come to you by way of contract zone requirements anyway. And that's probably the path that most of them will continue coming to you. So I may be overthinking that, and most of the big projects you'll be seeing anyway because of the fact they need other relief under the land use regulations. And I guess the final point I would make, this is a complicated, very, very important matter. So this is one that, to the extent the ordinance committee is willing to really start to go to the next layer, I think it needs to be fairly well developed, at least from a concept point of view, and somewhat legal researched before it goes to council. If not, I fear we're going to be in months of workshops again. So I don't want to get ahead, and hopefully you all get to the point of talking next steps. But I hope this committee is able to, if you're interested in some or all of these thoughts, to spend a little more time to flush it out before it goes to the next level. That's my initial thoughts.
Great, thank you. Who wants to speak first? Mr. Johnson.
Hello. Good points, Tom. You're right. I thought I have some initial reactions, and one of them first. So hopefully that will be something that maybe even you can move forward with conceptually. I don't know if you know the detail, but you can at least ask the attorneys, you know, where's the danger here, if there is any. I mean, I do really appreciate the conversation to start moving it forward, because we have, it's been a while, but we're busy, but we have heard from all the stakeholders, the school, the developers. I've lost the list. It's been around. I agree with the premise. I think overall, it's town council would like to see better management of the pace of growth, because that's what GMO is. It's pace of growth. It's not where things go. That's zoning. It's not impact fees. That's something else. So growth overall is bigger than the pace of growth, and hopefully we will continue this journey looking at the whole growth policies of the town at some time. I did like the policy statement about it coming to the council. I don't have as much concern about that. I mean, we need to definitely flesh that out about what would trigger that. But the way I see it, it would be special cases. And again, if we're going to put in a pace ordinance, if we're going to tighten the language, make it less confusing, come up with a magic number, a sweet number, not a constrictive number. I think if we're going to use 10-year averages, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's a sweet number, but through the discussions we will. If somebody needs over and above that, it is the business of the council, because we've just implemented a pace which is the amount of growth over an annual period. If there's some exceptions to that, instead of saying, hey, no, we're out of permits, is what we're doing right now, at least there's a discussion. Similar, I vision it similar to contract zoning. And what I really like about that, that's a super majority on the vote. So I like the policies initially brought forward. There's definitely some work. I'm not sure what the next steps are. I don't think we would be in workshops forever because I think there's a desire by all 7 councilors to do something. And like everything, it doesn't, and first pass doesn't have to be perfect. We can keep the door open for adjustments, but anyway, that's my thought. Again, I appreciate at least the conversation has started, and it's up to everybody to move it forward.
Thank you. Mr. Hamel.
Yeah, I agree with much of what Ken has said. I watched the video closely and gave feedback to Paul and John and also to Jean Marie and Ken. I appreciate Tom's comments and Ken's response to those. I think, one thing that this proposal does for me is that it does kind of put the council, I think, squarely in a role where we need to be. I think the changes that occurred in 2007 and 2017, it's taken us a long time to A, make sense of exactly the effect they've had, and B, to try to get our arms around them. I think the suggestions put forward by Paul and John Clucci, help to address those things. So I agree that the contract zone, I like contract zones because it gives us an opportunity to negotiate community benefit with developers. But we're trying to not treat everything as a contract zone. And if we're going to do that, we have to have some rules of the road. So I am very impressed by this work. I think it's a good start. It's not going to be a complete solution, but I feel very optimistic about what it will do, and I support it completely for moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. I can't add too much different. My reaction to it was basically the same. I thought Tom's thoughts on, when you send things to council, they do tend to become politicized. And that would be something we've got to kind of work through. When would be the case when you would go to council? I liked removing the fractionalization, frankly, because that's just been a mess, to be honest with you. It works, but it's past its time, and we need to move forward. When the GMO was originally written, remember, they were working also on new zoning and the comp plan and all of that. So that was then, and this is now. And we're in a different space as a town. It's pretty clear that the people of the town of Scarborough want to maintain the rural nature of as much of it as we can. And that's great. I live in the rural area and I'm fine with that. I don't want to see growth necessarily out where I live. But I chose to live here. One of the important things is to make sure that people understand the rules of the road as much as possible, and we aren't pulling the rug out from under people, because then you're trampling on, I'm going to use the term we use in real estate, trampling on people's private property rights. So we want, you got to find that fine line there. Frankly, I would like to see something drafted. That's how I work. I'm so darn visual that I would like to see something drafted, maybe by staff. I'm looking at Tom, that kind of takes up some of these ideas and at least starts framing them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it may not be drafted in full form, but
right.
I do think these concepts need to be tested legally and kind of practically.
Yeah.
And I'd want to do that before we engage the full council. I don't want to waste your time, so to speak. So, this can go many different ways. I'm certainly appreciative and sensitive to the, I'll call it, positive momentum that kind of is created by these thoughts, and I want to seize that, frankly. So I'm not going to slowed the process down, there seems to be enough interest to understand more that I can certainly engage staff and the town attorney to give some serious critical thought to these concepts. And we could share the results and even invite the town attorney to maybe a town council workshop to fully discuss the concepts. That's one path forward.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom, too. And just thoughts off the top of my head, because I really do believe if and I know how busy staff is, but if we could do some, it doesn't have to be perfect work, but framework type work, because I think that sweet number that's going to be the annual allocation, let's just say that's the core for the sake of the session, getting that sweet number that can be negotiated, but at least the starting number gives us all something to have visually in the discussions of the lower level, like the counselor thinks. And nothing was more evident than the unfairness, and I almost catch myself saying this, distribution of the permits. The intent of the original GMO was to try to preserve that, a fair distribution. So they said, no development more than 20%. And you figure at that time frame, 20 separate subdivisions going on in the town would have been huge, right? So it was probably even liberal. Okay, but now with the master plan and the subdivision and the subdivision, we had 6 developers on there and half them got shortchanged. And we've been getting emails ever since we've run out about all the individual landowners that were trying to build a house for themselves or a family member and everything. So yeah, I really like the thought of tightening all that up. So maybe what I was trying to ask Tom was, I would imagine Jay would probably have some kind of verbiage around that, because he knows the terminology. I call it a master plan. I don't know if it's a master scheme or whatever we call it, but see what that definition is and see what we can do with that verbiage in the GMO.
I see. Yeah.
I was just going to say on those 2 points, those are points that Jay and I brought, I've been talking about for months now, and I brought to both John and Paul before they met. I'm confident we can find a way to tighten those and close those, not even tighten them, but close them all together. And I highly recommend we do that, because I think that was contrary to the original intent, and it just defies logic. That's not what was ever intended.
Right.
And I think the second one there, tying the growth permit to the building permit, really demonstrates the developer's need for it. They are ready, willing, and able to build, as opposed to speculating and planning for the future.
Layaway.
Yeah.
Or another way is just to tighten that down. It must be used within 60 days or something. Again, so there's other ways to address it.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I definitely would like to see, as I said, I don't know if you want to call it a scratched up outline or some sort of something that we can work from, some framework that we can work from, some draft language, numbers, data, whatever, that then we can work from to put something together that makes sense. I also want, before I forget, and Dawn, I haven't forgotten you, I saw you, is that I have a neighbor, I believe he's listening here, Jay Chapmas, and his broker, Patrick Cooper. He's got a 7 lot subdivision right around the corner from me on New Road that's all approved, pretty much ready to go. And because there aren't any growth permits, they can't do anything with it. And I'm going to throw this out here because I've lost a bit of the thread of this. Are we going to try to do something to address the short-term issue with people, or am I bringing up something that we need to think about?
Well, Chair Johnson kind of championed that notion. He didn't advance it for your meeting last night, so I'm not aware that I think this overtook those thoughts.
Yep.
I'm not sure if this is going to provide the sort of near-term relief that some may be seeking.
Yeah.
To provide some relief is a fairly light touch to the ordinance, frankly. Right
Yeah.
now, there's the allowance for the code enforcement officer to grant up to 5 additional permits. The distinction there is for permits that are not part of a subdivision. So
That's correct.
it's the person building a second lot on the back land, so to speak.
Right.
So Mr. Chapman wouldn't benefit per se from that, simply upping that number to 10 or 15, but some additional language could. So there's
Yeah.
a simple path forward if you want to provide some short-term relief while this larger fix is happening. The reality is it's going to take us a couple of months, even in the best of circumstance, to work this
Right.
through the council.
Right, because I know their situation is such that they're selling the development per se. In other words, and a lot of people do this, they'll develop, they'll get the land use all set up, and then they'll sell it as a package, so to speak,
Mhm.
for a developer to then bring it to fruition, to pull the, building permits and whatever. And it is a unique situation compared to what we see around here in town. So
Yeah,
it's just something that,
I've heard
I'm
from 2 or
wondering.
3 others that are in a similar, not
Okay.
exactly the same, but similar boat.
Okay.
They're part of subdivisions. They want to
Okay.
keep moving, and they're anxious for
Yeah.
obvious reasons right now.
yeah. So I just want to put that out there, that we may need to do something shorter term, but I don't want to get in the way of us looking at this larger term. Dawn, I'm sorry, I put you on hold forever.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Good discussion, good points. I wanted to make 2 comments. One is, I know this is, what's in front of us now is not going to address all of the issues that we have, with the GMO, but I will say that I think that it addresses the, 2 major issues. And there are other things that we may need to address that may go beyond the June target date for us to have something to move forward, for the council. And I think we've touched on some of them, but they would include things like updating impact fees, trying to get an update on enrollment data, school enrollment data. And then finally, Ken had mentioned survey on services at some point. I don't know the precise timing of those 3 things, but I don't expect we would get through all of those between now and June. So I want to make that one point.
Mm-hmm.
One other comment I had is that John Clucci referenced that residential construction has been a quote unquote development engine, an economic engine for the town. And I think that's a fair statement. The question is how much we want to rely on that development engine, or, and for how long. So, and that's just sort of a question. I don't have an answer for it, but that is a concern. And some of our developers are not only residential developers, but they're also, commercial developers. So, I think we need to be a little careful about an over-reliance on any one engine, number one, and any one developer who, may be part of that.
Mhm.
So,
Well, and Ken, I know you're going to speak, but just to make a finer point on Don's point, which is, I think, an excellent one, is that not all development's created equal. So construction, generically, though that may be true, some of it costs us, there's an effect, in some cases a negative effect. So being smart and understanding what type of development is advantageous is part of this equation, no question.
thanks.
Ken, go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up on something that Councilor Hamel mentioned, and forgive me if I misunderstood you. I just want to, it's because it's very easy to do, okay? Growth is definitely larger than the pace of buildings in the town, okay? There are other significant things I think we should address, like the impact fees. I just get very concerned that they get conflated. They're similar and kind of related, but GMO stands all by itself. All that is the pace of growth. So always think
residential growth. I know you remind me of this all the time, and I'm constantly expanding.
That's okay.
This is our little yin and yang that Ken and I have, and it's a fair statement, and I get it absolutely.
Okay. Oh, good. Thank
Absolutely.
you, because I don't have to bring up. Remember, guys, it's residential only as we're dealing with GMO. Keep that in mind. Mr. Hall.
I'm just trying to perhaps help you with the path forward. You know, it struck me early, and I'm thinking of it again. The current GMO is complicated, as we all know, and it doesn't necessarily flow well and read well because of the multiple amendments through the years. It may be that we find ourselves doing almost a repeal and a replace. So it creating a new ordinance that is, you know, from the ground up, if you will. I don't know if that's the case, but it might well be the easiest way to kind of to build this going forward. Point being that the drafting is going to take some time, you know, the actual wordsmithing of it. Having said that, I think Paul and John created a detailed enough framework with at least muscle on the bone that we could start fleshing that out. And, you know, for instance, they talk about a 10-year average. I mean, we can calculate that and provide, you know, specific, what does that mean in actual numbers of annual permits and such. So I do think we have enough to go on to kind of give it the practical and legal test and to start to flesh out those principles a bit further. The question is, where does it come back? Go back to you, or is that in preparation for a full council workshop?
Yeah, go ahead, Ken. I want to hear your feedback on that.
Good question from Tom. Great overview on that. I feel that's the starting point of our first workshop. Even if it's let's get all on the same page about where we are, what we're doing, and the intent of it, you know? Yep. So that's what I would think. I mean, that could be an hour and a half. And then from there, we get the input for the full council on what are the next steps.
Yeah, the danger of it keeping here is it's three of you. And that you might all agree, and it falls flat when it goes to council. So getting some consensus on those fleshed out policy items, I think, would be helpful before we really roll up our sleeves and do the hard work.
Right, but you will do the legal thing first, though, right? Because that could be that's definitely is going to be input into this discussion.
Of course, yep, that's the next order of business. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking let's get something together and bring it to a workshop with council. I mean, that makes sense to me.
So time-wise on that, what do you think? Because a lot of that will hinge on Tom because of staff, and you know, the staff. But
probably the second meeting in March 20 or whatever it is. No, March 14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that I'll be personally fully immersed in budget preparation. I present on the 31st of March, but I don't need to be intimately involved in all of the legal and practical stuff. So we all work better to deadlines. So again, I want to seize on the momentum. I don't want to rush this unnecessarily, but by the same token, I want to things moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that mid-March makes sense too, just because of budget. At least we'll be able to stay focused on that as a council during the workshop. So I'm all for that.
So that would be something that we would bring forward to the council as we'll get on the agenda, right?
Right.
We can report back to the council as a result of this meeting.
Right.
What the plan is. So
it may be that you guys are just interested enough in their germ of an idea to really to explore it further. I don't think it needs to come with your endorsement. If I were you, I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable endorsing it yet. But
well, I'm going to expand for the discussion, for the workshop discussion. Because like I said, it's a great starting point of discussion. All the key areas were hit. It's just what flavor of those areas are we going to all agree upon.
Right.
Okay. Dawn, I know you're vice chair and you're more up on what you and Paul have cooking on the back burner. What's your thought on this?
I agree with what's been said in terms of next steps. I think that we don't want to jump too quickly to trying to do written work. I think we need a workshop to socialize this a little bit better with the council. But and I think the time frame that Tom mentioned in terms of starting to do some of the drafting of the ordinances is reasonable. So But I don't see a lot of steps, a lot of to and fro. It would be nice to, maybe get some input from the long range planners at some point as well.
The challenge we have right now is competing priorities. So staff and long range are solely focused on comp plan. So
right.
We'll do our best to
We
manage.
already did that, Tom, to be completely respectful. They were the first stakeholder we had meeting with, and then they had 3 subsequent meetings. We've got all their minutes. I respect the long range planner, but I can't see of anything else that I need from the long range planner. It's more legal verbiage around the master plan thing and the sweet spot number. I think from those 3 things, we can drive down on all the principles and the policies. Doesn't mean they don't expand, but those are the linchpins for me. No long range planners, Don.
Come on.
This group is doing a lot of good work. You forget the fact, what they did, and people forget what they did. So we're a little close to it, Marie and I, and it's how we're spending our Friday mornings lately. So.
And I can't be there this Friday, but we'll talk about that later.
At least I remind you, whether you like it or not, your town charter designates them as the body that deals with growth and development in town. So,
And we're going to hopefully change that to commercial.
But let's not get hung up on that right now. Let's take the next step, which is what we've been discussing. Get it at least in front of a workshop with the council, and then we can move from there. Because I'm sure the 4 other members of the council have some thoughts on where they want to go.
I think this video got us from 0 to 60, kind of in 17 minutes. So I mean that's fast for committee work.
I'm just trying to wrestle my seatbelt on, so we don't get.
Buckle up for safety.
Just to clarify my understanding, Tom, you mentioned the 14th of March. That's for a scheduled workshop, correct? The materials will be ready for the first socialized discussion, level set, grounding on the 14th.
Yeah, it's still going to be, somewhat conceptual, but I think it's going to be very much advanced thought with the with legal input as well.
Okay.
So,
no, that sounds good. That sounds good to me. We're moving it forward.
So are we all in agreement? The workshop 14th, legal will have been involved. Planning is going to be some conceptual, something for us to work from.
Yep.
And Don, you and I and Paul will talk about as that day gets closer if we're able to accomplish that. But that's our target. We'll push forward.
Thanks, Tom.
Always got to have a target.
Liam said that Betsy's still in the audience and has had her hand up. Betsy, if you don't, I can give you a couple minutes here.
Geez, our arms got to be tired.
It turned blue.
Can you clarify, is that a workshop for the whole council or a workshop for ordinance?
Whole council.
Okay. And so, yeah, it's been a real challenge knowing how to plug into this process. I've sent email. I've attended various meetings. So had I known like making a video was the way to get, some ideas out, I certainly would have done that. I think it was a very good presentation that they gave. There are certainly things in there I agree with and things I don't agree with. I think the challenge right now is you've got 5 counselors who've been able to give pretty good input. The 3 of you guys, because you're on ordinance and you've been working on it, you're very close to it. And then today, a 15-minute presentation from 2 other counselors. So I would just say, ask you, what's the best way for John and I to kind of get some ideas to Tom and Jay, if we're going to be shaping this for a workshop on the 14th. What are your thoughts on that? I guess
as a council
meeting with them directly and maybe doing a video as well. That seemed to be effective. And then the other piece I feel like we're missing, and I don't know how to attack it, is, I think the public, has some input that we could really value for shaping this. And I'm not, prepared to offer, ways to do that now, but, the public has been very interested in this issue and has found it challenging to plug in. So I
Well-
guess I would, just speak up for John Anderson and myself that, we certainly have ideas to weigh in here. Had I known the way to do it was to make a video that would be shown at the ordinance committee, I would have done that. So,
Well, actually, they weren't able to meet with us in person, both of
well,
them.
I
So that's
come
why
to
they
the
did
meetings
that.
and you give me 3 minutes. So
Yeah, well,
if
yeah.
that, so they
Okay.
had 15. I mean, if if
Betsy,
anybody, if
Betsy.
any counselor can, plug in that way, that's great.
Okay,
I'm just at this point, what I want to do is just make sure that the other two counselors, the minority counselors who haven't had a good chance to find a way to plug in, get some input into the process for the workshop on the 14th.
okay, thank you. Just as a reminder to everybody who may be watching this is just the beginning of the process. And there will be plenty of opportunity for public input as we go along. I certainly have been getting emails on this. Picking up the phone, emailing is always available to anybody in the public and or the town council. So I encourage people to do that. Anything further, Mr. Hall? Did you have something you wanted to add? And
I
Ken's
guess I
gonna
just
stand up.
want to be clear with Councillor Gleisten. It's not that I'm not interested or respect your opinion. I guess in the interest of time, what I'm interested in doing is fleshing out the framework that's been laid out to us. And this will be presented as a discussion item, a workshop for council. I think that is your opportunity to comment, pros, cons, add. And undoubtedly, this is not complete. This is truly a framework. So there'll be additional parts that can be bolted on or modified. But just for the efficiency of the process, I don't see it valuable to be spending time with individual counselors, even those present right here to monkey much further beyond the framework that's presented. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to be very clear in expectations.
Ken,
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. The video comments, let me put my duct tape hat on, do that, but every meeting this ordinance has had around growth has been open to the public and other counselors. I've had several discussions with other counselors and there's emails. So everybody is included, Councilor Gleisten, including you. And no, you don't have to make a video to get it moving forward. We thought it was kind of clever and it was welcome.
all right. On that note, are we done with our business for today, gentlemen?
One can only hope.
I gotta go catch up on that Mars landing. No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second,
All in favor? Tracy?
Counselor Johnson,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
yes.
Counselor Katarina.
Yes, and I'd like to thank everyone who took the time to testify before us today and give us input. And we will see everyone next month. Ordinance. Third